A little external mic I bought for mine, but I didn't bring it. It only works with the iPhone. It's got these. What's that called? A fire.
The lightning. Yeah, the Apple stuff.
Yeah, but they're going to USB-Cs now.
Yeah,
which
I hope
is
so.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
all
so
the new
it's
phones, the new
universal.
Apples have USB-C.
That's the
Yeah,
best thing.
totally. Oh, I just. Are you sitting here?
Oh yes, I am. But I'm
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. 2 degrees south, I guess. Oh, first. You did, yeah, and you know UCI has a big thing, Dialog. We have a campus up there. And you said UCI.
Hey, welcome everyone. Ready? Hi. My name is Lee Eisen. I'm the president of C3 San Diego. Breakfast Dialogues are back. We're really excited to be here. It's been a while. So I think this will be the first of what we hope will be many more breakfast dialogues to come. Focusing on the knowledge action network. So those are the areas that C3 has identified as key geographies in the region, each of which has a chair that sits on C3 that heads up those knowledge action networks. So from the backcountry to the border, to the bay, and everything in between. So we hope that we'll focus the breakfast dialogues on the cans moving forward and have more of them. So I'd like to introduce our moderator today. Actually, real quick, some sort of housekeeping notes. We take you all up on the way in here, but there's a card for membership registration if you are so inclined to join C3 as an organization. Your support helps us continue to carry on the legacy that is C3, as well as the Find a City podcast series, which there are 30 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. Quite a few. How many? 60. 60, okay. So lots of really good content there, including conversations with some folks in this room. So without further ado, I will introduce Ms. Holly Kicklight. Holly is a current C3 Backcountry Knowledge Action Network Chair, a senior biologist with ICF, and the founder of a new consultancy, Ask Environmental. Holly has more than 2 decades of experience working with municipal and state governments in the environmental and conservation space, and has been instrumental in the success of the San Diego region's multiple species conservation planning programs. Holly looks for opportunities to integrate climate resiliency and adaptation into biodiversity management using nature-based solutions and new policy initiatives. And Holly's going to moderate our panel today and introduce the rest of our speakers. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you so much, Lee, and thank you everyone for being here. 90% of live is showing up, and especially when it's 7:30 in the morning, so I really appreciate that you're all here. And I want to start off, I'm going to just pull up the next slide. We have this is our agenda. I'm going to do the panel introduction, and then we'll just kind of get right into it. These are some of the guiding questions that we'll be asking today. So I want to introduce our esteemed panel, and some of these people, well, Michael has been someone I've worked with for a long time, I won't say how many decades. And he's in the conservation and habitat space, and he's done so much for San Diego. He is the president at Endangered Habitats Conservancy, and he's the San Diego director of the Endangered Habitats League, and a former county of San Diego planning commissioner for many decades. Several decades, sorry, Michael. He's a champion for the voice of the environment. Michael has actively engaged in bridging the spaces between conservation, biodiversity, and climate action and renewable energy. So please join me in offering up a warm welcome to Michael. And our next panelist is Bree Fordham. And Bree is the executive director for the Anzo Borrego Foundation. Bree is a conservationist supporting the largest state park in the nation through a nonprofit dedicated to education and preservation of the natural beauty, biological resources, and wide open vistas. Currently, the park is in the epicenter of San Diego's county big energy generation and distribution plans, described as some as PowerLink 2.0. So please join me in giving Bree a very warm welcome. And our final panelist is Bill Powers. And some of you may have seen him. He's been on the news a lot lately. He is a professional mechanical engineer who owns Powers Engineering. Bill also happens to lead Power San Diego Initiative, which is described as a utility for the people, which would replace SDG&E, a for-profit utility, and create a not-for-profit public power utility. The effort gathered over 24,000 validated petition signatures, which triggered a city council vote on June 10, 2024, to adopt the Municipal Electric Utility Initiative as an ordinance, or to put the initiative on the November 2024 ballot. Power San Diego continues in its mission to educate the public and negotiate with government officials on the important option for energy in our region. So please give a very warm welcome to Bill Powers. So if you panelists would like to come up and take your microphones, we're going to get right into it fairly quickly. So we're going to be talking about conservation and renewable energy. And the first question I want to ask to the panelists is, what is your role in the backcountry and in the green energy space? So I'm thinking maybe we'll start off with you, Michael.
Okay.
You're ready?
Okay. I'm not sure I need a microphone. Can you hear me? Fine?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think my role here in this conversation is to help establish some context about how our dilemma of supporting renewable energy and working against unnecessary impacts to the environment. Probably most people in this room have that same kind of tension. We certainly do. And I think this is a kind of a classic example of trying to hit the bullseye where we can actually do both. Facilitate renewable energy, reduce GHG, and not unnecessarily impact the natural systems that we have in San Diego. So, since 1991, my primary organization, Endangered Habitats League, has worked on these large regional conservation plans. Most of you are probably familiar with the MSCP in this part of the county. But eventually the entire county of San Diego is going to have one of these large strategic ecosystem reserves established throughout the county. That's actually connected to Orange County and Riverside County as well, where the same kind of effort is going on. And a lot of interaction with Northern Baja California as well with regards to wildlife and wildlife movement and those sorts of things. These programs are unique in that they integrate at the most fundamental level the primary cause of reduction in biodiversity impacts to the environment, and that is land use decisions made by local government every day, day in, day out, individually focused on a particular project. Do we approve it? Do we not approve it? Do we change it around? And what has never happened before the early 90s is integrating natural resource protection into that decision-making process. So the primary gear, if you will, that drives these programs is this integration with local land use. So participating jurisdictions, in the case of the MSCP, I'm gonna try to flash you with a map because it's we're trying to get it onto the PowerPoint. But you don't really need to focus much, but can you see that map fairly well? It's two colors.
Green are the habitats.
I'll even, well,
I can.
okay, anyway, yeah.
Bring it around. Sure. Thank you.
I just want to make, just trying to make a real simple point. So that's the MSCP South and multiple species conservation plan, and it involves the city of Chula Vista, city of Poway, city of Santee, county of San Diego, and obviously the city of San Diego. And the idea is that any land use decision made in, say, Chula Vista about an industrial development in Otay Ranch or anything like that has to be vetted through all the work that we did in creating the database for what we're trying to protect in San Diego. Now, as a little kind of side note, again, most of you are probably familiar with this, but if you're not, it's sometimes you're so close to some of these issues, you don't appreciate the significance of them. So San Diego County has more biodiversity, more plants and animals than any other county and in the entire United States outside of Alaska and Hawaii, and outside of Hawaii actually. And this biodiversity in turn, because we're at the tail end of California, so the development pressure over the decades has been intense. It's been impacting all of this biodiversity, and then eventually that impact hits the Endangered Species Act. There's a federal Endangered Species Act that everybody's probably familiar with, but there's also a state Endangered Species Act. So when it hits that prior to the 90s, when a project hits that wall of, oh, if you move forward, you're gonna jeopardize the continued existence of this species. So you multiply that times 150 species, which are spread throughout Southern California, and you can see that economically it would drive things into a complete halt. And then politically, it creates, especially decades ago, the political decisions were always very pro-development. And so you had this dynamic of a heavy regulatory framework that was basically stopping development, or at least creating a litigation battle for every major development project in Southern California. So just a nightmare for everybody. So within that dynamic, this idea of creating a permanent ecosystem reserve in San Diego County, connected to Orange County, connected to Riverside County, and Los Angeles and San Bernardino to some degree as well, that we're going to now integrate natural resource protection into land use decisions, so that a decision made in Chula Vista about a subdivision or an industrial development is gonna be consistent at the biological level, consistent with our strategy with a land use decision in Oceanside. So these things are all integrated in a manner that has never been done before. You can imagine how complex this whole thing is, and it is very complex, but it's also extremely successful. And the idea of showing you this real simplistic two-color map is to say, okay, when we're all done, there's 200,000 acres here in just this portion of the county, these 5 jurisdictions that I mentioned. There's 200,000 acres that's gonna be permanently protected. It's gonna be linked together, so there's genetic flow, and it's going to be managed and monitored into perpetuity.
I have a question.
Sure.
How does this, plan connect to state parks?
Yeah, so I will get there. Well, I'll go right there. So when this green map was developed, the baseline starting point was an assumption, and the assumption is that already protected land, federal and state land, would be integrated into this program. I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing to do, but it still required a formality. So for example, the Bureau of Land Management, which is very much a part of this renewable energy story, this goes back to when Bruce Babbitt was Secretary of the Interior. They have to integrate their conservation with this framework of biology that I referenced that connects all these programs. So I'll try to kind of skim this to a summary here in the next couple minutes. But I wanted to give you the context for the one of the primary reasons to be concerned, and really the paradox of supporting renewable energy and supporting conservation of biodiversity. So when Bill is done talking and we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of the alternatives to this renewable energy, we can examine. And in a conversation that we had, the 3 of us had recently, I really began to see clearly that there is a way to actually support the renewable energy strategy in San Diego County and actually help it build, or at least not be in conflict with these conservation plans. So I'll stop there, but that's kind of where I'm coming from, so to speak, and what the context is. And when we talk about alignments and different strategies, I think we can examine it in the light of what we're trying to accomplish with our other hand, the conservation side of this story for San Diego County, as well as renewable energy.
So thank you so much, Michael. And I know that Bree is chomping at the bit. So right now, this is a map of all the MSCP spaces in the county. And the map that Michael had passed around is in teal, that's the South County MSCP. And then in the dark brown is the North County MSCP from the county, and it's in process. It has some start and stops from like 2008 and then 2015, but right now there's a draft working plan out, so that's moving forward. And in that space, I'm gonna use the pointer. Up here is where Palomar Mountain is, just to give you some context. And then where Bree is working in Anzo Borrego is down here in this space. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. I missed it. Bree is down in the tan area, if you can see that. And that's the East County MSCP, and that's not protected, and the county says they don't have any funding for that. But maybe there isn't housing development pressure, but we know that there's some big energy plans coming that we wanna let you know about. So Bree, I'm gonna let you talk about what your role is and what you're doing.
Sure. So I'm connected to this in two ways. As the executive director of Anza Borrego Foundation, our mission is to preserve and protect the park as the official cooperating association to Anza Borrego Desert State Park. So we hold a contract with the state of California to be able to fundraise, buy land, run education programs, and just generally support the park. About 10 years ago, we fought with a coalition against the Sunrise Power Link that was set to go directly through the park. We do have a small 69 kV line that runs through the park, but it's rather insignificant. We have caught notice of a proposal that has been approved by the independent system operator to run a line from Imperial to north of San Onofre. And the path of least resistance in combination with a recent assembly bill is the park, which basically removes the environmental review process for the next 6 years to achieve our renewable energy goals, which would allow them, without any public review or environmental review, to put the line directly through the park. So I'll talk more about that. The other hat that I'm wearing is that I'm the chair of the Borrego Valley Stewardship Council, which is a group that's been brought together to try to gain deeper understanding of the Borrego Springs community, which is inside of Anza Borrego Desert State Park. It's called a gateway community. It's completely surrounded. And what we're doing there with some grant funding from Prop 68 is we're trying to articulate what makes this community thrive, and it is so dependent on its natural resources, being dependent on a single source aquifer and the natural landscape of the park. We are trying to really make land use decisions based on preserving the community and its connection with the land. So going back to what Michael's talking about, we're really interested in better communicating with the county about how to build a community that's economically viable, while also understanding how we do that with land use permitting and the resource. So there's two ways that I'm connected to the conversation today.
Awesome, thank you so much, Bree. And Bill, do you have anything to add?
I didn't hear the question.
Oh, the question is, what is your role in
Oh, my role.
conservation in the green energy space?
Well, let me start with a question. How many of you are lawyers? Good. So you know the term exhausting your administrative remedies, right? So I was introduced as the campaign chair of Power San Diego ballot initiative to replace SDG&E with a municipal public utility, and really that represents, I'll start at the end, and that's the end, but what's the beginning? The beginning is back in the 2000-2001 energy crisis. Frankly, I had worked for a federal public utility in the 80s. I thought investor-owned utilities were like the fire department. And it was that crisis that opened my eyes to all of the profit-taking and sometimes ruthless behavior of those companies under the guise of public control, utility commission, all of that. And it was, first thing I did in response to that crisis was put solar and batteries on my house in San Diego. That was 24 years ago. And I have continued to be an advocate. Yes, I'm a professional engineer, and yes, my role is a lot of times nonprofits are spot on with their position on what should be happening, but they have a tough time in legal proceedings or administrative proceedings. They don't have the resume. I have the resume, but I'm saying essentially the same thing, that it was obvious from early on that the most cost-effective, fastest way to decarbonize is to put those solar panels on your home or in the parking lot, put the batteries where you use it. And that was my role in the Sunrise Power Link fight, was to advocate for a local alternative. And it has a certain common sense aspect to it. It just makes sense to do it. It's seamless to do it that way. And we actually won in the administrative halls, we won the Sunrise Power Line fight. The first decision was rejected, do a local alternative in San Diego. But what immediately happened because of the power of the electric utilities in this state, the private monopolies, is there are avenues in those proceedings where they can just put another decision on the table. And if they get 3 votes, it's done. And that's what happened at Sunrise. We went through 3 years of proceedings. We won for about an hour until the second decision hit the table and they voted on it. And now we have Sunrise going along Interstate 8. But what all this has taught me is, and what's changed the direction of my career 20 years ago, is you have to be watching this all the time. And you have to anticipate, and you have to work to cut off the worst of it, which is now happening, and Bree's at the point on that. But that's really the reason that a year ago, also worked on community choice energy, and I'm sorry Serge just walked out of the room because he and I were going down to Baja 15 years ago to try and stop an LNG plant where Sempra's piping US gas to the plant, or excuse me, it's coming in from there, now it's going out from there, but just, it's endless. And so this attempt, Power San Diego ballot initiative, is actually an attempt to go on offense. Is that if we have local control, we can do this. We can concentrate on local solar, local batteries, we can drop rates, we can get everybody engaged. And it was at least partially effective. SDG spent $1.2 million to try and block us. We spent far less than that in what we've achieved so far. But the whole point is to take control of our destiny. So I'll do that.
Oh, wonderful.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, yes.
I think for me, the paradox, or this sort of where the rub really is that I don't think that we really understand the tipping point of the impact of biodiversity in achieving renewable energy goals. And I think that there's a lot of information out there that is communicating clean, green, amazing energy is going to be produced out of industrial scale transmission. And I think there are a lot of people who truly believe that because it's being marketed to you. And it is a path to reach some energy capacity, but we don't understand, and there is no supervision over the number of those lines and the tipping point for where it is going to impact biodiversity. And case in point is that they are unwilling to remove the environmental review process to achieve these goals. And there will not be any protection against the environment. And there's nobody monitoring how many of these projects will be approved. So there's no oversight as far as when we're saying we want green energy, what will that actually do? There's nobody saying how many projects can be approved before it ruins the environment to achieve green energy.
Yeah, I think they feel that it should be green energy at all costs, and they're just thinking they're doing a great thing, all the politicians, but they don't realize there is a fine balance. We definitely need green energy, but we need to make sure that we're doing it correctly. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. It isn't just biodiversity. It's actually economically less expensive to generate local power than doing the universal methods they're using today. So there's an economic argument as well as an environmental argument that no one is paying attention, or no one in power is paying attention to. It's very important to understand the economics behind this. Putting rooftop solar in LA would save $2 billion for this North of Songs project, and most people don't realize it because no one will discuss it openly.
So thank you for that. I have another question, but this might be a good time to talk about this slide, which shows you the grid, and really what all we need, according to Bill, is in the green circles. We really don't need all of this jazz in the red, the big facilities, the big transmission lines. We just need like a mini grid station connected to customers that have rooftop solar. So Bill, I don't know if you want to expand on this.
Yeah, this is just a good, is this on?
It should be on, you might wanna press the little button.
Oh, how about now?
Is it green?
We can hear you good back
We
here.
can hear you good.
Well, I'm about to stand up and turn my back to you, that's why. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So let's just give everybody a base of understanding the grid. The grid has got three elements to it fundamentally. Off to the left, generally remote generation of some kind, either a conventional power plant, the upper left, renewable energy, hydro, flowing over a long line, high voltage transmission. Imagine the Sunrise Power Link from Imperial County to the edge of San Diego. And that high voltage has to be reduced to a low voltage to be used by the customer in the town. And so at the edge of town, there's a transmission and distribution substation. It's actually the same substation where this happens. And so how does the investor-owned utility private monopoly make its money? Historically, it's been completely vertically integrated, meaning it owns everything, but it makes money by marking up capital investments. So if it builds a power plant, it gets a guaranteed 10% profit. Builds a high voltage transmission line, it gets a higher profit, 10 or 12%, or 11 or 12%, and all the infrastructure that goes with it here. And then these distribution lines in town, low voltage, that's where the rooftop solar and local generation occurs. And so the cost of power, the power that's produced is a pass-through cost for the utility. So they're not marking up the power that is being sold. They're just, the incentive is to build stuff and get a fixed profit. And so these two circles here are showing that what I'm talking about, this Power San Diego or local municipal distribution utility is, it's not that all of this is dismantled. We have huge infrastructure that's available to support us now. All this is basically how it works. But as we put in, and one other comment, we pay the highest transmission charge in the state, meaning that every kilowatt hour that you use that you didn't produce from your own system is getting burdened with, Holly, can you go back?
Yes, sir.
That every kilowatt hour, even if it's coming off your panel and going next door, it's getting burdened with this transmission charge as if it was produced in Wyoming. That is actually one of the reasons for pursuing an independent local public utility. That charge is so high that we can put solar panels on commercial building rooftops and parking lots at less money than the charge itself. We don't pay that charge if we're an independent public utility. We only pay it on what we pull in. So the economic argument, just following up on that, is that they have put so much cost burden on this transport system that if we're independent, the way we reduce costs going forward, in addition to just not having to pay profit, not having to pay excessive executive salaries, is to put solar in the city. But it's important to know that the motivation is the profit comes from building that. And currently, the way this economic model is set up, that putting solar on rooftops, having customers buy their own solar systems and putting it in, is in effect creating a competition with the investor-owned utilities' financial motivation.
Thank you so much for that.
Could you point to the areas that you're talking about? Because it's not clear to me.
Oh, here's the pointer. So you just press this middle red button.
Sure. Okay, generation. So in fact, interesting to point at this, one of the first projects I worked on binationally was opposing the way plants are being constructed right across the border from Imperial County in order to pipe power straight into the substation that was feeding the Sunrise Power Link to feed our markets. But this is the generation. This is fossil plants, wind turbines, hydro. This is the high voltage transmission here. This collectively is just one substation where the high voltage goes to lower voltage. We have several of these right at the edge of San Diego, actually. And then we have the neighborhoods that have the low voltage transmission lines, distribution lines that you see around town.
Question, are there blue energy into this grid? Blue meaning from?
You like ocean energy?
No, natural gas,
Oh.
blue energy.
Oh yes, I mean there's a tremendous number of natural gas fired power plants to the east this point about half of the power supply is gas-fired,
Natural gas.
natural gas. There's some coal further out to the east that's mixed into the general supply, but at least those that are, California-related plants are gas-fired at this point.
Okay, we have another question, is it Cliff?
Yeah, so this is, I think you're right with the distributed generation kind of model that you're here. But you're fighting, again, the system that you're talking about that's 100 years old and the finance model that's behind it. And so there's gotta be something, and I use the MSCP actually as kind of a good example. The MSCP is this amazing technique that was created to actually, I think, bring the builders on board, because they saw that if there was more habitat protection and things like that, and it was, they got the certainty of the regulation, they could go and build in those places where, the MSCP said it was kind of okay. Capital markets hate this though. And so that's I've worked on a number of huge renewable energy projects, but you can finance those. You can't finance this. And I think you're gonna lose.
I don't digress, I disagree.
That's kind of what I wanna hear about, because I think you're gonna lose on the issue of taking over SDG&E, because I don't think that the government is capable of doing it right now. And people don't trust the government enough to do it. They actually trust the profit-driven motives of a company to do it more, better. But how do you get the capital markets to pay for something like that? I have solar on my house, but it's like a power purchase agreement that they push out and they guarantee me a kilowatt hour rate. I don't know it's the best model, but you gotta redo the grid to be able to take all that energy being pushed out by individual little things. So sorry, there's a lot in that, but it's it's the financing piece that I just don't understand how you get to do it.
You and I are gonna have a separate conversation.
What?
You asked far too many questions for me, or put out too much on the table for me to just dominate this.
You have to know he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer.
No, I'm not a lawyer, but I just
Well, he plays one on TV. You're totally
let me make an important point. One is.
Sorry, I put this up for you too, to talk about this, but I can change the slide back if you want.
Well, maybe is this still working?
Yes.
Okay, so how many megawatts of rooftop solar do we have in San Diego gas and electric territory? Do you know?
How many megawatts?
Yes, 2,200 megawatts. And that is several 100,000 individuals like yourself making individual decisions. This isn't Wall Street. This isn't capital markets. This is you or me. How much utility scale solar and wind do we have in San Diego County? Less than 300 megawatts. Plenty of transmission capacity. So why couldn't they finance it? Why couldn't they get it done? They haven't been able to get it done. Had we stayed on the same track, when we just had a change in the net metering tariff for solar, I think most people here would know that. And one of the organizations I'm a part of, Protect Our Communities Foundation, sued the PUC, and we're currently in the Supreme Court over this issue, which is lowballing the tariff for rooftop solar. But let's say we win. Let's say we go back to the tariff we had. 10 years, we'd have 4,000 megawatts of rooftop solar. That's our peak load, at least before data centers came into the picture. That's our peak load. So the expansion of our rooftop solar system, and it's net metering. I would want it to be more than net metering. I would want people covering their rooftops. Not just net metering, but let's use the entire resource. So I don't see it that way. I see it as we had something that utilities could see. Forget capital markets, this thing is taking off. We're putting in 300 megawatts a year of rooftop solar. So then you talk about one last thing, because I'm now starting to dominate, so I'm gonna back off this. But what is this new tariff trying to do? One upside is it's trying to incentivize all of these systems to go in with batteries. That actually solves almost all the problems, because if you could go back to that graphic with the power plants and the transmission and distribution, is that you are right. Well, actually, these distribution systems are designed so that if one of these, what they call feeders, is knocked out for some other reason, they can automatically switch to the next feeder. It's got enough capacity to take basically double what it typically sees as a peak. If most of these or all of these solar arrays have battery storage, you then have control. I mean, you can utilize the existing grid without doing major upgrades and achieve, not 100%, but keep in mind that we are relying on this system to a large degree now, and it's still gonna be there. Nobody's taking those transmission lines down. Nobody's taking these plants out. Some of them will retire, but it's quite a robust system. And so I'll leave it at that, but if we rely on capital markets for our future, we will do this. That's the model. And so the idea that can the public, well, almost done. The idea, can the public handle running a utility? We've got 46 public electric utilities in California. We've got 3 investor-owned utilities. Those public electric utilities have lower rates, more stable rates, higher reliability generally. And so I'll leave it at that. But you and I should talk, because you're asking a very good series of questions. I need to be able to convince you for us to eventually get there. So we should talk afterwards.
One more question?
Yeah. So the stats that you were giving, we are basically installing more distributed rooftop solar on residential every single year than we have single renewable generation from the utilities. Is that what you're saying, over 300 megawatts?
Yeah, that's correct. In San Diego County, we have 2,200 megawatts as of March of this year. Last year, which was a banner year, we put in almost, I think, 320 megawatts of rooftop. That was a push for people to get rooftop in before this tariff change, but it demonstrates our capability, the speed with which we can do it. The 2 big renewable energy projects are the 50 megawatt wind project that's been out 20 years along I-8 by Boulevard, and then there's Thule Wind, which took years and years to do, which added another 100 plus megawatts. And then there are a couple of larger arrays in Borrego Springs, and then there's one, when I said larger, like 20, 25 megawatts, there's one near Acumba Springs. That's it. I mean, that's basically the entirety over a quarter century of utility scale installation. But what it underscores is, it is very tough to put larger scale installations into San Diego County for a number of reasons.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. Well, we sort of got into our next question, which is, what is going on in the backcountry with regards to energy, and what are the conflicts and opportunities? So we have, who wants to go? What?
Want me to talk?
Yeah, yes, Bree, the epicenter.
Will you go back to that other slide, just so that people can see the state park in the current lines?
This one?
Yeah.
Or do you
Yeah,
want,
this
you want
one
the
right
new
here.
one?
Yeah, this one right here. So
So,
can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Pointer. Okay. This dark outline, this is Anza Borrego Desert State Park. It touches Imperial, Riverside, and San Diego counties. It's mostly in San Diego County. It's the largest state park in the system. It has, and arguably, because of its location, the most protected biodiverse area. Incredibly important, also incredibly unknown to many people in San Diego County. Sunrise Powerlink originally, Sunrise Powerlink originally was set to go directly through here. And this is where it's going. You can see it's rerouted because of the protections that we had in place with CEQA and tribal lands, as it goes underneath the park, underneath Cleveland National, and all of this too is tribal lands that they've had to move around as well. With the current AB 3238, which is a bill that is being voted on right now. I just testified in front of the Senate committee on Monday. oh, sorry, did you move it?
Oh, I just put up the AB.
Oh, yeah, thank you. This bill, is being put forth by Eduardo Garcia's office. The sponsor is SDG&E, and it basically removes CEQA, from any approved line. They just amended it to, an approved existing right-of-way of a utility line. They can remove the CEQA process and they can run a line without any other type of public review. We have a 69 kV line that runs through the park to bring power to a couple of campgrounds and to bring power to another substation in Warner Springs, but it's very small. And you can see that this is the path right here. What they would be able to do if this bill passes is put this all the way through the park. This line runs over cultural preserves, a campground, many undeveloped campgrounds, hiking trails. It would be a massive loss for the park and how people use the park to have to recreate under this. Not only would it be a bad visitor experience, it also is detrimental to the endangered species that are in this area and the cultural preserves. So we are actively trying to educate the senators at this point to have them understand that while this bill looks fairly abstract and looks like a win for green energy, it is actually destroying the largest, most biodiverse park in the entire state. We have had some headway in speaking with some of the senators, and they feel that there is a potential that the state park system could be exempt from the application of this bill, but that does not exempt any other area in the state of California. So there's not another proposed line that I'm aware of that would be fast-tracked like the line that's being proposed now. May of last year, the California Independent System Operator approved the line from Imperial to north of San Onofre. And really the only path through the area of the county is through the park. If they had to go around, they would have to follow lines of either Southwest or Sunrise or go to the north and just bulk up those lines, which is an option. But currently, the bill would make the path of least resistance the current 69 kV line that would go straight. So there would be some cost savings for them, but also they would have a new electrification project that would probably be translated into more money for them and also the ratepayer. We're trying to educate the Senate to understand that reconductoring and putting multiple circuits on existing lines should be the priority to save the environment and not go through already protected spaces. I'll say that I spoke at the Senate committee hearing on Monday, and the chair of that committee congratulated Garcia for an innovative bill to meet renewable energy goals, and that he felt at his time at SoCal Edison and working for them that the Sunrise Power Link being rerouted around the park was a waste of 5 years and billions of dollars, and that environmentalists don't see the bigger picture for our need to have renewable energy. So there's a major conflict at the government level of understanding really what the impacts of these streamlined projects are. What I'm also seeing simultaneously at the county level with the new sustainable land use framework is that they're really trying to push development into these infill areas, focusing on vehicle miles traveled to reduce the carbon footprint around the area. And what is going to happen is large transmission lines will be put into the backcountry areas. They'll push energy into the urbanized areas where they want everyone to build and live. And there are less and less regulations around what will happen to the backcountry in that process. So there's sort of this unintended consequence layering where the most biodiverse county in the state with the regulations that we have right now and the weakening of CEQA could be very, very bad for what we love so much about San Diego County and being able to enjoy our backcountry areas, hike in the mountains, you know, I mean, to have this really diverse county, it's a threat. And I don't think that there's a single organization who's really monitoring this, and it's because there are several siloed efforts happening at the same time. In the name of renewable energy, which, you know, as a conservationist and working for an organization that cares about that, it's a both and situation. I want to see us reduce carbon, and I want to make sure that we're protecting our environment, but I think that we're going about it in a way that actually is going to severely impact it.
Thank you, Bree. So what else would we like to add? Can we talk about some alternatives? I know there's alternatives. We think that, number one, we really want the rooftop solar, but that's sort of out of the bag right now, and we hope to bring that back. But there's some other things that we can do to make the big energy a little bit better. And maybe we can have Bill talk about some of those alternatives. And
Could I interject?
oh, yes.
Which I think will fit into this conversation. There's been reference to CEQA and that this legislation would eliminate CEQA review. And I think it's important for the public to understand that CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, is the primary tool that the public has to voice fact-based perspective into a development proposal. So a utility provider isn't required to look at all the alternatives that may be available for them to reach their objectives. They set their objectives and their strategy, which is economically driven, which is just a neutral statement, it is economically driven. It has to pencil, and then the more profit it produces, the better. So they're gonna choose the project that meets that. But CEQA, it's a disclosure document. It doesn't like reject a project. It says you have to disclose all the impacts from your project, and you have to try to meet a standard of reducing significant impacts to neutral, to zero. So the idea is that this analysis, which is CEQA, this analysis will take a proposal from someone with an agenda, which again, it's neutral statement, it's just, this is what they want to do. We'll take that proposal and it will require reaching your objectives with the least damaging environmental alternative. So there are alternative analyses that are required under CEQA. And this is what I got out of talking to Toll the last couple of days, that there are feasible alternatives for them to meet their objectives. And that those alternatives are not only feasible, they're already on the ground and working. There's a way to quantify it. There's a way to have a fact-based conversation about this. But if CEQA is removed, then that alternative analysis is watered down to almost nothing, and you've got people testifying in front of a committee hearing in Sacramento saying, but wait a minute, we're generating 7 times the amount of megawatts right now that is being produced through these industrial facilities. Why can't we just move in that direction? Well, CEQA requires that you move in that direction, requires that there's an analytical alternative analysis. That's one point that would be lost if CEQA is reduced. The other thing is a cumulative impact analysis. It requires that a energy facility project look at all the past and potential future projects that would cumulatively add to the impacts of that strategy, of that land use strategy. So losing CEQA is not just streamlining and saving everybody time and money on processing. It's really the interface where the public actually has the law on your side, on our side, to say, you have to, let's look at all the alternatives and then make the right choice. This just jumps right to the conclusion. So I thought that was kind of an important.
That's really important. I want to add a couple more things to it so that people understand the weight of 3238, because, you know, obviously this impacts as of Borrego, but it would allow, the PUC to be the authority, in that process. So if it's an existing utility line, they can remove the CEQA process. They also will not have to offer biomigation. And the PUC gets to determine if that project would require the mitigation or not. So it makes the PUC the governing authority for all existing utility line rights of ways. The other thing is that whoever owns the right of way, as mentioned in the bill, only gets to review the section of the right of way that they own, not the entirety of the project. So they're piecemealing the feedback by property owner. So it doesn't allow anyone to give oversight of the impact of the entire line. It's a very scary bill to think if this goes through, the PUC would have total authority to work with each owner individually to completely put in exactly what they want without an environmental review process and without biomigation.
Yeah, and I want to add on that when this bill first came out, it wasn't just weakening CEQA, it was also going to weaken the state California Endangered Species Act, NCCP portion, which is the Natural Communities Conservation Planning portion. And that got taken out during this time when it went through Assembly Bill in early spring this year. But from all the bills that we've seen, I think I popped up a few slides that shows all these different bills. You know, they may have taken it out of this bill, but next week there might be another one that puts it back in, and we're just scrambling to try and stay in that political space in Sacramento. But they're doing a lot of things. You know, I do want to touch on the CAISO project. This project went through CAISO, which is the California Independent Systems Operator, and generally there's the CEC, the California Energy Commission, CAISO, and then the CPCU, and they used to be independent and offer each other checks and balances, but part of these legal things that they're doing is they're changing the PUC code to be more streamlined so that those checks and balances aren't really there. They're not going to really act independently. They're going to act more together to streamline environmental processes that they used to sort of, you know, spread out the project and make sure people had time to make sure it's a good project. And so a lot of people didn't know this CAISO plan came out and that the bid actually didn't go to SDS or SDG&E, it went to Horizon West, which is part of Next Era, which is like the biggest energy company in the whole country. And so there's some saving grace in that. And I just want to point out over on the right, the map in orange is what the Palomar landowners pieced together after Horizon West realtors came out and offered them to buy their land. Because if this line would come through that they're thinking about, it's called the North of Songs line, so it's north of San Onofre. So basically, the energy would be gathered around from Imperial and Jacamba and various different energy projects, and then go through Borrego in order to get to Palomar, and then it would go north of San Onofre, and then go into Orange County and LA and feed those jurisdictions. And there really is no limit for what can happen. Like, they may decide they want to export energy all over and keep building all these lines if we let them. But there are some alternatives, and do you think, Matt, now's a good time to get into, you know, if we're gonna have big energy, we could actually take those existing lines and upgrade them in place?
Hey, you want to put the slide up that you had earlier? Show the towers.
Yeah.
I'll just add too for information, AB 3238 sunsets in 6 years. So this is only a window to meet renewable energy. So, yeah, so they would only be exempting the CEQA process for these new electrification lines until 2030.
And that would be a lot of time to do a lot of damage.
And that's a promise.
Yeah, for sure. This line that we're showing you would absolutely go in on the existing rights of way.
So keeping in mind, oh, go ahead.
Will this information be available on the C3 website?
we're exploring that space. We are exploring different ways of recording or doing, you know, a video or something, but yeah, I think it's important, and this is just the first of hopefully many conversations in the Backcountry Knowledge Action Network. So
It's a lot of information to absorb in a short period of time.
Yes, but we want to present it to you so you can take those questions that you have and go and look them up yourself and figure out how you want to get involved. And we're always here. I'm the chair of the Backcountry Knowledge Action Network. You can reach out to me with my email. I'm on LinkedIn, Holly Smith Cakelighter. I can connect you with answers or places to do more research. And I welcome all of you to contact me if you have anything you want to explore, you have more questions from this meeting today. Because we obviously can't make everyone understand it the way we do it. We have understood it, but it took a lot for us to understand it at this level for all four of us. So,
I mean, it's an excellent presentation, and it would just be helpful to have it where we could sit with it.
Yeah, we're definitely working on that space, so stay tuned for that. But we are available to reach out to and to connect you with resources. Yes.
The C3 be taking a position and making some kind of political action as an organization with respect to this?
I mean, I think we just advocate for sustainable energy, and right now we're just trying to tell you guys the facts. I feel like a lot of people in the backcountry were blindsided by a lot of things happening, and if they were blindsided, the people at the coast knew nothing that was happening. All of my friends, I have a huge network. I've been in the environmental field for like 30 years, and none of my friends knew about this. At U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, at CDFW, at Sierra Club, none of the local offices. The state offices, like in Sacramento, those people maybe were more aware, but we're just trying to spread the word right now. And so, like I said, we want to have more conversations. And you can also email us on C3 and ask questions or let us know what you'd like to be presented at these meetings, because we want to start getting more active because there's a lot going on. Bill?
Are we writing letters or meeting with our delegations?
You know, that might be something that evolves, and in the past C3 has done that. And I think right now we just really want to empower all the people in San Diego and see what we see. And really, it's just like CEQA, the public has been the greatest asset for good environmental planning. And that's really what we're trying to encourage you guys by telling you all this information and bringing you in. So we encourage, all of you to write letters.
Yeah, appreciate it. I guess I'm getting the sense that this is urgent and there's not a lot of time.
I want Bill to go into the alternative because the alternatives are very real, and that's really what we need to push. If you want to write a letter, having actual facts, not just I don't like this. Right. It needs to be exactly what Bill's going to go over. And I'll just say that there will be resources. If anybody is interested in writing a letter, the next hearing is July 3rd for the Environmental Quality Senate Committee. The deadline has already passed, but please submit letters anyways. Individuals, organizations, whoever it is, if you want information about where the portal is and who to contact, I can give you all that information. You can just email me.
Yeah, and we'll work with Bree and the other panel members to put some resources up there so that you can keep checking back in with our website and see where you can maybe reach out to some of these politicians at the state and federal level.
And you can generally testify by Zoom now, so you can sometimes your testimony can be 30 seconds, a minute, and you're making a significant contribution to their deliberations.
Yeah.
So there's a way to engage and have.
And we can also make phone calls.
That's right.
Pretty basic.
I was one of two testifying in opposition for this bill. Yeah.
So there's a lot of room for engagement. So that's why we're here today, and we're so glad that you're here listening to this. And we welcome you guys acting on your own and acting with each other and acting with us on these issues, and until we feel like it's the right way to go.
Bree, you just said you were one of two in opposed. How many, if any, were talking in favor of the bill?
A lot.
Yeah, I'll pull
I
up
mean,
that.
the list of support, every single one of them went up to the podium and just said we're in support. There were two main testimony in support. One was SDG&E, and I forgot who the other one was.
I have them up here.
You can also watch the testimony online if you'd like to get a better understanding of the conversation. I think it's important before you decide to truly oppose is to hear who's for it and what their argument is, because I think just being educated on both sides is really critical before you take a stance. I've learned a lot about why people think that this is a good thing, and I understand it. I understand why you can hold that perspective. And I think fighting for it is important to acknowledge the work that's going into trying to fight climate change. That's truly what they're trying to do, and I understand that perspective. But I want them to understand the unintended consequences and that they need to take a measured approach to understanding that there are alternatives, and that's not being taken at this point.
Okay, great, thank you so much, Bree. Do we wanna get into the upgrading in place space now?
Yeah.
If you want to go back to the slide, Holly, that has the towers on it. Good. And so I'm not going to try and make anybody here an expert on transmission systems, but we'll just look at what we've got. And keep in mind that I am an advocate for local power, but for sake of argument, I'm going to go through the fact that there are better ways to upgrade transmission, cheaper ways than building new greenfield transmission lines. And so we have two 500 kV high voltage lines coming from Imperial County to the San Diego area. This is the Sunrise Power Link. And just quickly, one circuit has three conductors on it. So either 1, 2, 3. And you can see that the way this is designed, this is all you can do with this tower. You've got these three circuits, that's it. The earlier 500 kV line that also starts from the same substation is the Southwest Power Link. It's been active for almost 40 years or 40 years. Comes in southeast corner of San Diego. It too is one of these single circuit, meaning three conductors, 1, 2, 3. And there's no easy way to retrofit this tower. This is what you're stuck with. And it's important to know that there are numerous designs for these towers. This is one design. Here's another design. This is an SCG&E, a lower voltage, but still high voltage line in the Sycamore area of San Diego. These conductors are stacked vertically, 1, 2, 3. There's two of them, 1, 2, 3. This is called a double circuit tower. So it essentially has double the capacity of the single circuit tower. And so that's one option. Change out the tower so you can take another set of circuits and double your capacity. The tower doesn't have to necessarily look like this. It can look like this. It can be a single pole. Go to the next slide, we'll take a look at. The other thing I want to show you is, one other thing on this, is these conductors are the most basic conductors you can get, meaning they're the most limited in terms of the amount of power that they can carry. And so one option is to change out these conductors and go from the most basic conductor, which is on both of those existing transmission lines, and go what they call an advanced conductor, which under the right circumstances can double the capacity as well. And so interestingly, there's companion legislation going through the legislature that prioritizes reconductoring with advanced conductors, which is common sense. Yes, do that. It's less expensive. You can, again, under the right circumstances, double your capacity. And it might even be Garcia that is, yes, so Garcia has both on the table the most common sense way to increase transmission capacity, along with this idea of expanding right away. So that's it for this.
Did you want to talk about, okay, yeah. So we could double or triple our capacity on existing lines. Our power lines are like 30 to 40 years old, I understand.
Let me say one more thing and then have you come in. Is those two lines coming from Imperial County together can carry nearly 4,000 megawatts of capacity. We only exceed 4,000 megawatts of demand in San Diego a few hours a year in a typical year. We have another pathway coming from the LA area along the path of San Onofre that can carry 2,500 megawatts, I think. But the point of me saying this is that we have a tremendous amount of existing transmission capacity. And so it's more an issue of it's not that we're short transmission capacity, we're short only if we feel that we've got to develop all of our solar and wind power far out of the area, and therefore we would have to bulk up in some way to bring it in.
But so if you can redo the capacity with the actual lines themselves, and the financing model is that the utility receives a 10%, guaranteed, so they're gonna make the same money either way. Is the tower so much more intensive that it's that much more lucrative?
That's an excellent question, because I'm not really privy to the boardroom as they hash out which way to go. But reconductoring, in this case, would be substantially less expensive than building a greenfield transmission line. And so they will make money on it, and they'll make a lot of money, but they won't make as much money as they would on a greenfield line. And so we'll see how it plays out, but and there is in this little report, which we should probably make available to people at some points, it's already written up.
Okay.
But there's a recent report that came out in April of 2024 that looks at what is the relative cost. You reconductor an existing line, you reconductor and you change out the towers, or you do a greenfield line. And so I was kind of like 40 to 50% for reconductoring versus a greenfield line, incrementally more if you're changing out the towers, and then the more capital intensive greenfield line.
Because in the alternatives analysis that Michael was talking about, that's where you can win that argument, because fire being, a big one, because they fall down and start fires and stuff like that. But if you're reconductoring, it's kind of the same, it's an existing condition, and things like that. So often I think the intersect between the environmental community and this kind of stuff that I always see in the stuff that I work on is that we don't do this kind of thing, this middle way, and we just fight to the exclusion of things. And I think like Michael's organization is a really good one, where they've found like sort of a middle way to find a place where they can support development at times by allowing them to have a larger, like the MSCP, I just think is just such a wonderful regulatory function that way. And kind of Bree, what you were talking about with the compressing of things in infill areas. So that's great, but you gotta get your friends to actually support that. So when the Sierra Club comes and doesn't support, a project of mine that's 100 homes in a VMT efficient area that preserves 75% of its land, and then kicks my people in the teeth and makes them spend an extra $1 million, there's this sort of CEQA, you just get so tired.
Totally.
And that's when then you have a reaction like where you have to throw out CEQA. CEQA is a fantastic law that provides that transparency that's absolutely necessary. But we fight to exclusion in so many ways, and the developers do it too. They're like, I'm not gonna do it. And it's that middle section that's the intersection that I think this whole thing is about, is finding a way to get there.
Yeah. I agree
where
with
both
you.
can win.
I think that having a more holistic view of the county and understanding what is that we're trying to preserve, and we're in flux in so many ways right now with the shift away from community plans to the sustainable land use framework. They don't have an answer to all of this. The county is working right now and getting feedback from the communities of what do we need? What does economic development look like? They just developed the economic development department at the county in the last 2 years, and they're staffing it. It's not connected to planning whatsoever, but they're aware that they need to start getting this feedback. And I encourage all of you also to get as involved as you can at the county level in giving them feedback, because they're hosting meetings right now to understand what the community wants from an equity standpoint, to say, where do we meet development and economic thriving and environmental protections, And I've gone to a few of them for the backcountry. I was one of 12 people to represent the entire backcountry. Nobody knows about it, nobody's speaking up for their communities. All of this information is available, but they're okay with not marketing it to get the feedback that they need, because they can say they've done due diligence and then they implement it. So it's about getting people as involved as possible, because I think a comprehensive, holistic approach to what this incredible county needs to see have happen, we can be exemplary for the rest of the state. Truly, I believe that. There is not another state of this size that encompasses all of these ecosystems with the amount of protected land that we have integrated in that, right? And having what Michael's working on, having the state lands that are here, and having these urban epicenters and what the county is trying to do, there's a moment in time right now that we can get it right if we all start to speak up and like participate.
Yeah, thank you, Bree. I really, I just want to make a point. The county is trying really hard, but they have some missteps. The county RDF, the decarb plan, they really downplayed rooftop solar. And there is some groups that are suing them for that because apparently SDG&E was sort of giving them the information on rooftop solar, but it was really a lot less. So that came out in their decarb plan, so that's being scrapped. And then with the whole CEQA space, level of service for transportation switched to vehicle miles traveled, and then they, Sandag and the city and the county, all of their CAP plans, their climate action plans were sort of shot down. And then the community planning in the backcountry got shot down because they were gonna have too many vehicle miles traveled. So now people in Borrego are trying to figure out, well, what is a sustainable space? And now there's the county SLUF, the
Sustainable Land Use Framework.
Sustainable Land Use Framework, so that's fairly new, and so that's all up right now. There's been hearings on the CAP and the RDF, the decarb plan, and SLUF. So if you go into the county, it's a lot, but you can register for the different spaces that you want to engage in. And I really encourage you to, because I think the county wants help, but they don't even know, like some of the county people and the people on the coast don't know about all these big energy plans. So we just have to inform them, and you know, we want to see endangered species being protected, we want to see habitat being protected, we want green energy, but we know it can be done better. Yes.
Just to kind of build on that discussion of planning for it in a positive way to balance everything off, let's go back to the saying of think globally and act locally. Why are we not planning regionally? Why is there not an understanding of this is the best combination of use of land to protect the resources that are there, but at the same time take advantage of some of its production capability, especially from a wind standpoint? Why is there not a plan that is easy to implement? I have a feeling, and I definitely support everything you guys are doing. I do believe that a distributed production system is logical, but it's such a big battle that we all have to face here that it's gonna take all these things. And I'm afraid that the concentration of making the power companies look like they're taking advantage of everyone and trying to break all the rules, though I don't trust folks like SDG&E, I think what's happening is you're gonna win some small battles, but you're gonna lose the war. Because to me, one of the most essential things happening when we talk about protecting the diversity of our system is actually fossil fuel and climate change. That's gonna have much more of an impact on species throughout the planet. It already is having a huge impact on it. And if we're concentrating on winning a small little battle here and forget about the bigger picture on all this, I think that's gonna be problematic. So there's no doubt that there needs to be things constructed, whether it's at a local level or wind turbines that are out in areas that are producing great amounts of wind. I've heard the story that, this is an NPR story, that talked about there's actually a backlog of clean energy production capability in this country that could replace everything that we have out there that has been stalled for decades. So if we stall things too long, you're gonna win little battles, but you're gonna lose the bigger war on climate change. So
I feel that deeply because I'm just a tiny battle. I just happen to be impacted, and my job is to speak up for the resource, so I'm doing it. But I can very quickly feel that there are there's not a lot of attention in this space because they're not being directly impacted at this very moment. We got this little hot spot, we go, oh, we need to respond, and suddenly I feel like I'm carrying the load of what everybody else's concern is too, but I can't speak up for them, you know, and I
That's
can't
why I'm
act
advocating for
locally, yeah.
planning regionally and understand what it is that we need to really do, get everyone to agree to it. And then the implementation is easy, there shouldn't be big battles on every one of those projects.
Well, I think what these two are doing is closer to that, as far as having a more regional, global voice. I mean, I think Bill has made some major headway with the voting and getting recognized at the city level. That's closer than anything as far as having a real impact, and then having the protocol and the measures of an MSCP is huge in that same more global context.
So I want to pull.
This is an important point, if I could. In response to your, why isn't there a regional strategy that addresses all these sub-issues, right? Why do we have to fight them one at a time? And particularly with the East County and with renewable energy, if this project, for example, was going through the County of San Diego's planning process, it would go to the planning, it would go to staff, it would go to the planning commission, it would go to the board, and all your voices would be San Diego representatives talking to San Diego elected officials. And an alternative strategy has a much larger, greater chance of being adopted. Because eventually, decision makers have to make a finding under CEQA, which is another reason why they're avoiding CEQA. And that is, there are no less damaging feasible alternatives. And clearly there are, but they have to make that decision. But if this is the PUC that's making that decision in Sacramento, it's a whole different world. So that's the real challenge. So we have tribal lands, we've got a lot of public land, BLM, really, I mean, part of their mission is to make public use of this land. So a lot of those impact projects, mining and so on, happen on BLM land. So it's a very good point, but we're somewhat handicapped here. That's why focusing on Plan B, this is Plan A, this is Plan B, here's why ours is feasible, less damaging, and more economically viable. And just take the profit motive off the.
And I would suggest that the conversations of these alternatives and comparing the ways of doing this to come to the best conclusion is the best way for you to get that point across.
Yep.
Some of the discussion though seems like, you know, stop this and stop that, as opposed to let's do it the right way, and this is the right way. So a lot of your discussion was on alternatives, and I definitely believe that, you know, SDG is not a friend of mine, and we're all paying for the highest amount of energy here. So the profit motive has kind of gotten a little bit out of control with SDG. But talking about these alternatives, I think, is so critical to.
I want to interject a little bit too, because yes, I really feel we do need to engage with SDG&E more directly, but right now we wanted to get our networks understanding what's happening. But there was a desert renewable energy conservation plan that was written in 2011, and it got approved it started getting approvals in 2015. The wildlife agencies really liked it. It was like a comprehensive MSCP for the energy space. But then when the Trump administration came in, it got eviscerated, it got thrown out. So we could maybe go back to that and reinvigorate that. But right now, the only thing that survived is a BLM carve out, which is basically carving out 800,000 acres for potential, like an energy planning area, and like almost 400,000 acres of that could be energy facilities. And that got a record of decision from the federal government. So we need to be more engaged with that and maybe bring something back to light, like an MHPA again, for energy, because it's not just housing, and especially like the North County, the East County, and the county MSCPs, they're not really up to speed yet, but the energy projects are moving forward. So we do need to re-engage with some of the prior work that was really well done. It's out there. Bill?
Yeah, I had a question for Bill.
And we might have to wrap it up in maybe 5 or 10 minutes,
okay.
so just to
The alternative of district energy systems in urban areas and microgrids, eco districts, as you know, it's done throughout the world. and there's some really great examples in other cities. You don't see that much of that here in California. I know Berkeley tried looking at an eco district, and they bumped up against a lot of, I don't know if it was regulatory or legal issues between properties and financing. Is there a fix where we can make those easier to do within existing urban areas, or big projects like we have with the sports arena site and the Qualcomm Stadium site?
That's a great question, because there has been some pressure at the state level to do microgrids, and there are a half a dozen SDG owned microgrids now in at very high cost in the San Diego area, and they consist of, here's a substation, and they have what's called a feeder coming off the substation, put a battery right there, and maybe the police department's on that, or hospital. So they have the ability to isolate and do that. So we have some in San Diego. But that's actually one of the motivators behind pushing for a public utility that would have the control to do that at its, it's the extent that
Toronto has a very good one that's a mixed income, affordable housing.
Yeah, currently it's been tight, the ability to freely put in microgrids has been tightly controlled within the utility space. So we have some, but they currently, and there's constant push from outside to, hey, open it up to microgrids, but it hasn't moved.
Yeah, Bill, I have to say, when I first started exploring this space almost like a year ago, the first thing I was looking at, why don't we have more microgrids? Alonzo Borrego was the only one that had it, and it wasn't really functioning well because of weird things going on with the unions and things like that. And I think some of the tribal spaces had microgrids, but why? And then I found that there's some state law, and there's also federal law that sort of shoots ourselves in the foot with that. So I think people just need to look at the big picture and sort of help our politicians be guided in the right things to do, and then help the people like SDG&E find a new space to make profits from,
For legal fixes, we can try to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to wrap it up, I think. I think we have a few more minutes, but we do want to continue this conversation, and I'm so grateful that you're all here, and I hope to see more of you and on a continuing basis. And please engage with our website, and there's space you can put in comments or say how you want to be involved or what kind of information you